In 2023, a single company became worth more than the entire economy of the country it was born in. Not a tech giant, not an oil empire, a maker of medicine, headquartered in a quiet suburb of Copenhagen. Novo Nordisk, for a moment the most valuable company in all of Europe, worth more than a year of Denmark's total output. And economists started doing something strange. They began publishing two versions of Danish growth figures. One with Novo Nordisk, one without. Because the company had grown so large it distorted the numbers of its own nation. The engine behind all of it was a drug that began as something nobody was looking for, a treatment for diabetes that quietly, almost accidentally melted away body fat. This is the story of how a 100-year-old insulin lab became the most important pharmaceutical company on Earth. And it starts not with one company but with two, and a rivalry that lasted 65 years. It's 1922. A Danish scientist named August Krogh is one of the most celebrated physiologists alive. 2 years earlier, he won the Nobel Prize for explaining how the smallest blood vessels in the body actually work. But the most important fact about Krogh that year has nothing to do with his Nobel. It's his wife. Marie Krogh is a physician and a researcher in her own right. And she has type 2 diabetes. In 1920s medicine, that was close to a death sentence. There was no real treatment. Doctors prescribed near-starvation diets that bought patients only a few extra months. Then news arrives from across the Atlantic. At the University of Toronto, two researchers named Frederick Banting and Charles Best have pulled a substance out of the pancreas that reverses diabetes. First in dogs, then in dying people. They call it insulin. So when the Kroghs are invited on a lecture tour of North America, Marie pushes her husband to make one crucial detour. In Toronto, August Krogh meets the team behind insulin, and he sees what it does. Patients who were skeletal, comatose, hours from death, brought back within days. He secures something extraordinary, the license to produce and sell insulin across all of Scandinavia. He carries it home to Denmark, partners with a sharp young physician named Hans Christian Hagedorn, and in 1923 they found a small non-profit laboratory to make the drug. They call it Nordisk Insulin Laboratory. The mission is not profit, it is supply. Denmark's diabetics need insulin, and Nordisk exists to make it. Within months, Danish patients who would have died are walking out of hospitals alive. It is one of the fastest journeys from scientific discovery to working cure in all of medical history. If you find stories like this one worth your time, subscribe, there's a new build here every few days. But Nordisk's monopoly on Danish insulin was about to be broken by two brothers working inside its own walls. Inside Nordisk worked a pharmacist named Harald Pedersen and his brother Thorvald, a gifted toolmaker. The brothers clashed with Hagedorn, and the relationship broke. So in 1924 they did what stubborn ambitious people do. They walked out and started a rival insulin company a short distance away. They named it Novo. They had no license, so they reverse-engineered the entire production process themselves, using equipment Thorvald built by hand. And then they made their first real breakthrough. Not a drug, but a device. The Novo Syringe, a simple reusable glass syringe that let a patient inject themselves at home, with a single hand. For someone who needed insulin every day for the rest of their life, that was freedom. Now Denmark had two rival insulin makers, founded by men who had once worked side by side, sitting almost within sight of each other. For the next 65 years, they would compete on everything, and refuse, again and again, to join forces. What followed was one of the strangest rivalries in industrial history. Two companies, in the same small country, making the same product, locked in a race that ran for 3 generations. And the race made both of them brilliant. In 1936, Nordisk scientists developed a slow-release form of insulin, known as NPH insulin, that let patients inject far less often. It became one of the most widely used insulins in the world for decades. Novo answered with its own advances in purification and dosing. They pushed each other relentlessly. By the 1980s, both were among the leading insulin producers on Earth, exporting to dozens of countries. Then, in 1985, Novo released a device that quietly changed daily life for millions. The Novo Pen. It looked like a thick fountain pen. You dialed your dose, pressed a button, and injected, discreetly, anywhere. No vials, no glass syringes, no ceremony. The insulin pen is now the global standard. Both companies were winning, but the market underneath them was shifting in a way neither could survive alone. By the late 1980s, the economics of medicine had shifted hard. Drug research had become staggeringly expensive. Regulators demanded enormous, costly clinical trials. And new competitors, giant American and European pharmaceutical firms, were moving into the insulin business with far deeper pockets. For two mid-sized Danish rivals, the math was brutal. Apart, they would slowly lose ground. Together, they might lead the world. In 1989, after 65 years of refusing, Nordisk and Novo finally merged. The combined company took both names, Novo Nordisk. Overnight, it became the largest insulin producer on the planet, controlling a vast share of the global market. The old rivalry was over, but here is the trap they were sitting in. Insulin had become a commodity. A handful of companies made most of the world's supply. The science was mature, and the margins were under constant pressure. To truly break out, Novo Nordisk needed something insulin could never give it, a molecule that nobody else on Earth controlled. That search led Novo Nordisk scientists to a strange and fragile molecule called GLP-1. It is a hormone your gut releases when you eat, and it does several useful things at once. It tells the pancreas to make insulin, but only when blood sugar is actually high. It slows the emptying of your stomach. And, most important of all, it travels up to the brain and tells you that you are full. For a company built entirely on diabetes, a natural hormone that lowered blood sugar on demand was a dream. There was just one devastating problem. Inside the human body, GLP-1 is destroyed almost instantly. An enzyme chops it apart within 1 to 2 minutes. Inject it as a drug and it is gone long before it can do meaningful work. For years, that fragility made the hormone a scientific dead end, a beautiful idea that nobody could turn into a real medicine. Most companies gave up on it. Novo Nordisk decided to try anyway. The problem landed on the desk of a Novo Nordisk chemist named Lotte Bjerre Knudsen. Her challenge was almost absurd. Take a molecule the body wipes out in 2 minutes and make it last for hours, or even days. Her team's solution was elegant. They attached a tiny chain of fatty acid onto the GLP-1 molecule. That fatty tail acts like a grappling hook. Once injected, it latches onto albumin, the most abundant protein floating in your blood, and hides there, shielded. Protected, the drug releases slowly, escaping the enzyme that would otherwise destroy it. A hormone that once lasted 2 minutes now lasted a full day. The result was a drug called liraglutide. In 2010, Novo Nordisk launched it for type 2 diabetes under the name Victoza. It controlled blood sugar beautifully. But in the trials, doctors kept noticing something they had never gone looking for. Patients on the drug were losing weight. Not a little, a lot. And they kept describing how the constant background urge to eat had simply gone quiet. Here is the pivot that built the modern company. For more than a century, the holy grail of medicine had been a safe drug that made people lose weight. And the history of that search was a graveyard. Diet pills that damaged hearts, stimulants pulled from the market, surgeries that carried serious risk. And now Novo Nordisk was quietly holding a molecule that did it almost as an afterthought by turning down the volume on the brain's hunger signal. So the company made a bold decision. It would develop the same drug, at a higher dose, specifically for obesity. Not as a cosmetic product, but as a treatment for a genuine disease. In 2014, that drug was approved as Saxenda. It was the proof of concept. Obesity, it turned out, was not simply a failure of willpower. It was biology, a system of hormones telling the brain when to eat and when to stop. And that biology could be adjusted with a single molecule. But Saxenda still had to be injected every single day. The next version would only need a shot once a week. Knudsen and her colleagues went back to the molecule and rebuilt it again. They reshaped its structure to resist the body's enzymes even more stubbornly, and retuned the fatty acid anchor so the drug clung to albumin for days at a time. The result was semaglutide, a GLP-1 medicine so durable that one injection lasted a full week. In 2017, Novo Nordisk launched it for diabetes under a name that would soon be everywhere, Ozempic. It controlled blood sugar better than almost anything that came before it. It protected the heart. And it produced weight loss that, in trial after trial, just kept climbing. Doctors prescribing it for diabetes watched patients shed 10, 15, even 20% of their body weight. Word spread, not through advertising, but through patients and physicians who had simply never seen anything like it. Something that had begun as a quiet side effect was becoming the single most talked about property of the drug. And Novo Nordisk realized it was holding the answer to a question far larger than diabetes. In 2021, Novo Nordisk released the very same molecule, semaglutide, at a higher dose, approved specifically for weight loss. They called it Wegovy. In the obesity trials, patients lost on average around 15% of their body weight, results that until then only surgery could deliver. And then the culture caught fire. Social media filled with before and after stories. Celebrities first whispered about it, then admitted to it. Demand exploded so fast that the company physically could not make the drug quickly enough. Pharmacies ran dry, waiting lists stretched for months. People drove across state lines and national borders just to fill a prescription. A medicine for a chronic disease had become the most sought-after product in the world, and the company that had spent a century quietly perfecting the humble injection suddenly could not build factories fast enough to keep up. To buy raw capacity, Novo Nordisk's owners spent more than $16 billion acquiring manufacturing plants. The little insulin lab from Copenhagen had become a global phenomenon. By 2023, the numbers had become almost hard to believe. Novo Nordisk overtook the French luxury giant behind brands like Louis Vuitton to become the most valuable company in all of Europe. Its market value climbed past $400 billion. And then there is the part of the story most people never hear. Novo Nordisk is not controlled by ordinary shareholders. The controlling stake is held by the Novo Nordisk Foundation, a charitable foundation that owns the company and pours its profits into scientific research. Swollen by the success of Ozempic and Wegovy, that foundation became one of the wealthiest philanthropic organizations on the planet. By some measures even larger than the foundation built by Bill Gates. A non-profit insulin lab, founded simply to supply one small country, had given rise to a charitable empire funding science around the world. But a company this enormous, in a country this small, creates a problem that very few nations have ever had to face. Novo Nordisk grew so large that it began to bend the economy of Denmark itself. The company's spending and exports helped prop up the Danish krone. Its growth single-handedly lifted national output, which is exactly why economists started reporting Danish figures twice, once with the company and once without. A single firm had become a load-bearing wall of an entire national economy. That brings extraordinary benefits: jobs, tax revenue, prestige on the world stage. But it also brings a quiet fear. What happens to a country when its largest company stumbles? When so much depends on the continued success of one product line, one molecule, one bet, the whole nation is exposed to it. And in the pharmaceutical business, no lead is ever permanent. Somewhere out there, a competitor is always building a better version of your miracle. For Novo Nordisk, that competitor already had a name. The American company Eli Lilly had been quietly developing its own weight loss medicine, a molecule that targets not one gut hormone but two at the same time. In its trials, it produced even greater weight loss than semaglutide. Suddenly, Novo Nordisk, after years of running unopposed, was in a genuine fight. Investors who had treated the company as unstoppable began asking far harder questions. And when one of Novo Nordisk's next-generation experimental drugs delivered trial results that fell short of towering expectations, the stock dropped sharply. In 2025, the company that had been the most valuable in Europe lost hundreds of billions in value, and its chief executive stepped down. The miracle had not ended. Millions of people still depended on the drugs, and the science kept moving forward. But the story had finally become something more honest than a fairy tale. Even a 100-year run of brilliance guarantees nothing in a race that never, ever stops. Step back and look at the whole arc. Two stubborn rivals in 1920s Denmark racing to make a hormone that pulled dying patients back to life. 65 years of competition that turned both of them into masters of one of the hardest crafts in all of medicine. A merger they avoided until the world finally forced their hand. And then a fragile molecule that lasted only 2 minutes, rebuilt, anchored, and retuned by chemists who simply refused to let it go until it reshaped how the entire world understands hunger, weight, and disease itself. Novo Nordisk was never built on a single flash of genius. It was built on a century of patient, unglamorous work on the same narrow problem by people who kept going long after the obvious discoveries had already been made. The insulin lab that grew larger than its own country was not lucky. It was simply still there, still working, when the breakthrough finally arrived. If this is the kind of story you want more of, subscribe, and we'll show you how the next one was built.